these are the examples of, these are the examples of built-in discrimination, like legal discrimination in the South that forced a separate class of humans up until about 35 years ago in the South specifically. Does that make sense? So, I mean, the laws were different. And today, laws aren't different, but we still see the effects of these type of things, right? Poor Southern schools are not very good, right? Poor inner city schools are not very good. So even though the laws are even today, the opportunity still isn't even for many people, right? It's become less about race, maybe a little bit more about income. But because of discrimination, income has fallen on one race. Income probably has fallen on one race more than the other. Did I show you that thing that, on YouTube, the wealth pattern thing?
No.
Did I show you that to you? I may show that to you today. It's really interesting. The inequality in wealth thing, have I shown you that?
No.
It's interesting. So here is sharecropping in black codes, and it's going to elicit a congressional response. So now let's see what happens when the radical Republicans get pissed, and what happens. The 1866 election, the Republicans come in and they start passing crap right off the bat. Now guess what Johnson's going to do to all this crap? Veto it. Guess what Congress going to do? Override it. So let's look at some of these. First one was the Civil Rights Bill of 1866. The Civil Rights Bill of 1866 said that all people have equal citizenship. Blacks were given citizenship. The purpose of this was try to break up black codes. That if you have equal citizenship, you can't obviously have these laws. But one of the problems that we're going to see happen in the South in the next 100 years is that the federal government can pass all the rules they want, but what has to happen if blacks are going to enjoy these rights? They have to be enforced, right? And the states just don't enforce them. They just don't get enforced. Are there laws around here that don't get enforced and some that do? Yeah, well, that's a little bit less discriminatory, but my aunt actually, who hates police officers, hates police officers, got arrested, but got fined for jaywalking in Atlanta. The ironic part was a cop almost hit her with his car, and he had the red light and she had the crosswalk sign. She hates cops. I mean, she literally hates cops.
How is it jaywalking? Yeah.
It's not. It's only jaywalking. It's a jaywalking if the cop says it's jaywalking. So every time she gets fined or pulled over, she gets more and more mad at cops. And last time it happened, she owed like $150 or $200, whatever it was, and she went to the police station and she paid them in pennies.
How would you do that?
Yeah, she paid in pennies. Not as much as my brother-in-law who hates cops. The last time he got pulled over, he said, did I tell you what he said? Go F yourself, you effing Barney Fife. No one effing cares what you think.
You told us that last year.
Yeah. And he's always like, I can't believe the cops always give me the highest fine. I'm like, well, don't tell them to go F themselves. Write that down, by the way. If you want to not get in trouble, don't do that. Now, does anyone know anything about, what is it, what gave everyone, like the Civil Rights Act of 1866 gave everybody equal citizenship, right? It gave black people citizenship. Right, the 13th Amendment abolished slavery, the 14th Amendment gave citizenship. But why did the North think that we needed an amendment to confirm that?
They could say it's uncommon.
Okay, the judicial branch can't override a law, or sorry, an amendment, right? What else?
The states could say that was unconstitutional.
Well, the states. Well, hold on. Maybe, but this is the judicial branch. It's free from judicial branch because it is constitutional. It's a constitutional amendment. How can you overturn a law if you're Congress? How can Congress get rid of a law? Has Congress ever written a law and then decided it was a bad law and written a different law?
Yes.
So then you have to write a different law? So is it that hard to write a different law?
No.
Is it hard to undo an amendment?
Yes.
So the North wanted to make sure that this amendment could not, or this law could not be undone. So they decided to start moving toward the 14th Amendment. and it was sent to the states in 1866. And this is to provide protection for all citizens, right? Just like the abolition of slavery, where this could not come back. They were also worried because now that black, remember, how was black representation figured before 1865? 3/5. But now, think about this. Think what the South is getting. The South is allowing no black people to vote, but what are they getting from black people?
More representation.
More representation. So South is getting more representation without giving anybody any rights. So it looks like the South is coming out ahead in this. So the North wanted to make sure that this was cemented by an amendment. And after the 1866 election, they're going to go even further with military reconstruction. And we're going to show a map of military reconstruction. This is what really starts pissing off the South. And the South considers Reconstruction to be the worst thing ever. It's because of military Reconstruction. Military Reconstruction was the North saying, here's a big giant middle finger, South. And they divide the South into 5 military districts. Do what?
How many?
5. Sounds just like, right. This is where we get the idea for Katniss and Peta.
That movie comes out on Friday.
My daughter's pretty excited to see it.
It's the best book, so.
It is.
My wife and daughter, I didn't read them. My wife and daughter both thought that the first one was the best, and the last two were.
Last two.
The last
The
one
last one.
sucks.
Last one's awful.
I will say that, you know, the person who, the woman who wrote it, whatever her name is, has been accused of stealing the idea, though, right?
All of the names she
Oh,
gives
yeah.
for people from the Capitol are from like Greek history and
That is pretty cool. But there was a Japanese book and then movie that came out a long time ago that was almost the exact same plot.
Battle Royale.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that movie.
You mean Hunger Games?
No,
Really, it's the same thing.
kind of.
Because people were like, wow, how does this woman think of this? And everyone was like, well, she watched the movie and then she wrote it. Alright, so here's the thing. You are going to be having the North's military up in your business until you are a southern state and until a southern state does the following things. Okay? You had to rewrite your constitutions not only to get rid of slavery, but to also allow for the 14th Amendment, and part of your Constitution has to give black males the right to vote. And you don't get to become a state until your Constitution is rewritten to allow for abolition of slavery, equal citizenship, and black male suffrage. Which is ironic because a whole bunch of northern states didn't have black male suffrage. Guess what Johnson did to this law? And it was overturned. And most of the states pretty quickly lived up to this, except for 3 or 4. But Johnson was getting to be more and more hated. He also vetoed the Freedmen's Bureau, but it was overturned. Right? So he vetoed the Freedmen's Bureau, he vetoed the Civil Rights Act of 1866, he vetoed the Military Reconstruction Act, and he was seen as a giant roadblock. So when the president's seen as a giant roadblock, what are the Republicans going to want to do to him?
Impeach him.
They're going to want to impeach him. That's exactly what they did. Congress passed the law called the Tenure of Office Act. Do you see that? Now, if any of you are president, you get to choose your own cabinet, right? So, looking around, I think if any of you are going to be president, it's probably going to be Amber, right? So Amber is our decisive president. Would you want to run for president?
She's not very fun.
It would be fun. I think Amber would be really good at it. She'd be like a nice Hillary Clinton. Not that Hillary's not nice, but Amber's a little bit softer. So Amber can choose anybody she wants to be in her cabinet, right? And then she'll appoint that person, and the Senate would confirm that person, right? If you ever get to be president, I want to be your Secretary of Awesome. That's what I want to be. Okay. That'd be an awesome job. Secretary of Awesome. I would make that up. What if Amber wants to fire me being Secretary of Awesome?
She can do it.
She can do it, right? The president can fire whomever he or she wants. You with me? The Tenure of Office Act took that right away from the president. and said if Amber wants to fire, well, not Amber, it didn't say Amber in the law. It says if the president wants to fire somebody, he or she has to get Senate confirmation. And the reason was because Congress was having Edwin Stanton spy on Johnson's meetings and then tell them everything that happened. And Johnson knew about it and wanted to fire Edwin Stanton, and they wouldn't let him. So the Tenure of Office Act said that the president could not get rid of a cabinet member without the Senate approval. And this is basically just rewriting the Constitution. And Johnson vetoed it. To be fair to Johnson, it should have been vetoed. It's a horrible law. But guess what Congress did? They overruled it, and they said this is the last straw. Johnson can't stay. And they filed impeachment charges, and it happened. He was impeached. Now, in B. Ward's U.S. history, he does a really big impeachment trial of Andrew Johnson. We are not going to do that. Why should you get impeached? I mean, why do people get impeached?
Because you cheat on your wife.
It's supposed to be for high crimes and misdemeanors, right? High crimes and misdemeanors. In our country, we've had one Supreme Court justice get impeached because he was a D-bag. We had Johnson get impeached because nobody liked him. And we had Clinton get impeached because the Republicans couldn't beat him and he slept with somebody. And to be fair, he slept with a lot of people. That's not why he got impeached. They said he lied under oath, but that's debatable. In the end, it's because they don't like him, right? And it looks like, and if you're going to kick out of office, you know what the vote is in the Senate? Like, the House impeaches you, but if you're impeached, are you kicked out?
No.
No, you're on your way to being kicked out. But Bill Clinton was impeached, but he had the same powers in office, right? You only lose your powers if the Senate removes you from office. And it's a 2/3 vote to be removed from office. It looked like Johnson was going to be removed from office until a senator from Kansas, whose name is escaping, on the day of the vote, decided to vote for keeping Johnson. And the reason he decided to do that was he thought it was not a good precedent to set to be kicking presidents out just because you can, right? That the separation of powers would not have been cemented very well. Just because Congress was really powerful doesn't mean they should choose who should or who should not be the president. Does that make sense? So Johnson stayed in office. Very unpopular, but he stayed in office. And as I had mentioned, part of the Military Reconstruction Act was passing suffrage laws. So now the 15th Amendment allows for African American male suffrage. Even though a lot of the black codes didn't let it happen, black males could vote after 1870. And this is when things like literacy tests and grandfather clauses and lynching start happening. But for a brief period, about 1868, this is when military reconstruction was going on, right? And the North military was there. The South had quite a few black leaders. The South called it Black Reconstruction. And you had states like, in fact, in 1868, during this brief period when the military was in control of the South, you actually had more black senators in 1868 than you have today. Guess how many black senators there were in 1868?
2.
There were 2. That's more than today. I think we have 1. Look it up now.
Is this just in the South?
Yes, just in the South, just in the lower South. Some, a lot of state legislatures, no governors, but there are a lot of African Americans who were in office. How do you think they did compared to white people?